Hello world, my name is Andy Silvers and today we're going to talk about how to make your writing better. Alright, so if you're watching this channel, you're probably an author. And if so, you're likely a very creative person. However, we all know that all the creativity in the world will not guarantee you success or save you from bad reviews. You have a lot to focus on when writing a book. My novel, Solomon Grando vs. the Jupiter Witch, is nearing completion, and I'm working diligently to put the finishing touches on it. The point of this video is basically to take the natural creativity that you have as a writer and channel it into a quality book, because a book isn't just creativity, it's structure, it's proper storytelling, it's good prose. There's a lot of things that come together to make a story work. And that's what I'm going to help teach you in this video. So, here are 5 things you should do to make your book as good as possible. First, improve character voice. It's okay to write in your own voice for draft 1 or 2, but at some point, you'll need to make sure each character has their own unique way of speaking. In case you aren't aware, character voice is basically just the way that each character speaks. This includes accents, it includes certain terminology that they use, and it includes the way that they carry themselves, which I'll get to in a second. So basically, the character voice needs to be distinctive for each character. You don't want it to sound like the author is speaking every time a character is speaking, right? So different characters will speak in different ways. Some people will use slang. Some people will speak very intelligently and use a lot of big words. Some people won't do much speaking at all. But there's another component to this, and that's the way that a person will react to a given situation. So here's basically an exercise for you. Take several main characters in your book and write a piece of dialogue from some sort of third party that's accusing them of something. So have a character accuse a fictional, or have a third party accuse your characters of doing something wrong, and then write the dialogue reaction of those characters. So for instance, if a character is narcissistic, perhaps they will refuse to take responsibility for what they did, and instead, if they're narcissistic, they may actually try to imply that what they did was actually good. Not only that they didn't do it, but that it was in fact a good thing to do. And then maybe another character would be just jump into apologizing, jump into I'm so sorry, my bad, I didn't mean to, etc. So try this experiment. If you realize that all of your characters sound the same even when doing this experiment, then you need to create a Word document or some other document where you list out the different characters' sort of motivations, but also their personalities. And you need to understand your own characters before you start writing. However, if you've already started writing and it's too late, you can at least go back before you publish and fix the character voice. Second, remove fluff. So fluff is anything that does not contribute to the main plot or character goals. Now, here's the interesting thing about fluff. If you ask, or if you tell authors that they need to remove fluff, they'll say, yeah, of course I need to remove fluff. Duh, everyone knows this. But the problem is that people define fluff differently. And this is the issue. Authors will keep things in their book that they personally happen to like, even if it's not good, even if it's fluff, even if it's not necessary. There's a saying in the creative industry, kill your darlings, which basically means even if you like a scene, you like a character, you like a plot point, if it's not contributing to the overall story, and especially if it's not entertaining, you need to remove it. So fluff is anything that just isn't really contributing to the story. A side plot that goes nowhere, a character that you just throw in there that you think maybe, oh, well, this character is for comedy. They're the comedy relief. Well, here's the thing. A comedy relief character can be funny, obviously, but they're not really useful. So what you should instead do is write out the comedy relief character and have some other characters incorporate comedy into their dialogue and actions. And comedy doesn't necessarily mean making a joke. It can mean situational humor, right? It can mean a really buff man with tattoos and giant muscles carrying a pack of diapers from a grocery store. Third, subvert expectations. This is where you take a trope or plot point that seems predictable and do something shocking or unexpected with it. Don't subvert just for fun. Do it organically and in a satisfying way. And this is something that takes practice. It's not something you'll get probably on the first try. But basically, you don't want to do the obvious thing. Because readers, particularly readers who read a lot, which is a lot of readers, they'll have read that plot point before, and they'll know exactly what's going to happen, and it'll be boring to them. And if it's boring, if they think they know what's going to happen, they may put the book down and not buy your next book, perhaps. So you need to subvert expectations. Do something different. Do something exciting. Have a character turn out to be the bad guy, for instance. I mean, that is somewhat cliche in and of itself, but if you were planning a stock, good guy versus bad guy story, having the good guy become the bad guy at the end, for instance, is a way to subvert expectations. It can make your writing more interesting. Remember, you're probably not the first person to have done something, even if you think your work is original, because there's so many books out there. It's probably been done, but if you can at least create a unique world and do something unique within that world, then you will keep readers' attention and you will be able to succeed as a writer. So, subvert expectations. Fourth, diversify your cast. This is where you write a diverse cast in order to better represent the population. Now, you might say, I don't want to pander to certain groups. I don't want to just write in characters like this and that just to check off boxes. And I completely agree with the idea that you shouldn't check off boxes. But the truth is that the US and Canada are very diverse places, and really the rest of the world is also diverse. For instance, a lot of people will write a medieval story, and every single character will be white. Or they'll write a fantasy or dystopian story, and it'll be the same thing. Every character is white. And the problem with this is that it's pretty inaccurate to human history, first off. There's actually way more intermingling of different countries and cultures than you might think. And second off, if you're writing a fictional story, they're not tied to the limitations of the real world anyway. You can have African Americans, you can have Hispanic people, Asian people, you can have all kinds of different people, people with disabilities, people with one arm. You can do all kinds of things. So don't say, well, it's not realistic, because first off, it probably is realistic, actually. And second off, if you're writing fiction of any kind, but particularly fantasy and dystopian, things where the world itself isn't even real, you can have all the diversity you want. And this is important, not because of checking off boxes, because that is actually a problem, because it feels fake, right? Black people, Hispanic people, they're not a list, they're not a token, right? They're real people, so you want to represent them honestly and accurately. However, you want to have diverse characters because people like to see themselves in fiction. They like to see themselves on the page. And same with movies. They like to see themselves on the big screen. Diverse films and books typically do well, so keep that in mind. Fifth, use all five senses, right? With all five senses, so that they're clearly and vividly utilized. This is something a lot of authors forget. So they're wondering, I don't know how to make a scene more interesting. I don't know how to describe a barn any more than I already have. Well, have you described the smell? What about the feeling of the air? What about the heat or the coolness? What about the feeling of the straw beneath the person's feet? I mean, there's so many different ways to describe an environment. And using the 5 different senses is a great way to do that. It makes for a much more vivid and exciting reading experience. Now, here's a key tip. Don't just describe places. It was a doorway with a spider's web hanging in it. That is not particularly engaging. Have characters interact with things to make a description more interesting. Instead of webs hung on the wall next to the door, say, a lone fly buzzed through the entryway into a massive web spun by an awaiting predator. Connect action with environment. A reader isn't going to feel anything if you just say there's a doorway and there's a web. But they will feel for a fly that's about to be eaten by a spider. So you've created an emotional connection while also describing a location. We now know there's a doorway and there's a web nearby, which would suggest maybe there's other webs nearby. So you've painted a picture, but you've also created an emotional connection with the reader because they care more about a fly than they do about just, it's a door. it's not particularly engaging. So definitely use the 5 sensors and find interesting ways of describing environments that allow characters to interact with those environments. And by the way, the fly isn't necessarily a character, but you can do this with actual characters. You can have the hero walk through the doorway and they get hit with a spider's web and they're trying to get it off. They get sticky and it's gross and it's getting in their mouth. That would be a much more engaging and interesting way of saying there's a room with spider's webs in it. Alright. Please check out my latest novel, Red Sprites and Blue Jets. It has a 4.9 out of 5 stars on Amazon. If you want more information about it, visit Andy Silver's Books, which is my Facebook page. My contemporary book, my contemporary fantasy book, Solomon Grando versus the Jupiter Witch, is in the edit phase right now. I'm really excited about it. Look forward to that near probably the end of the summer or early fall. I'm sort of working a job, so it's going to slow down a little bit, but I've done a number of rewrites. I'm doing exactly these tips. I'm going back and I'm fixing things and I'm adding more pizzazz to the book to make it a bit more interesting and engaging. So please keep an ear out for that book. It is coming. It is really exciting. I can't wait to share it with you. Also, like this video and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you in the next one.